It would be difficult to find a greater thug than Carl Williams, the babyface gangster who trafficked drugs and murdered anyone who got in his way. But to his only child, Dhakota, he wasn't evil at all, rather a gentle, doting dad. Born in the middle of Australia's bloodiest gangland war, Dhakota had a childhood like no other. She benefited from the glitzy excesses of a mobster's ill-gotten gains, before ultimately facing the brutal reality: crime never pays. When Dhakota was 9, Carl Williams was bashed to death in prison. Now, 8 years later, the young woman is trying to step away from the sins of her father. But to do that, she first must discover the truth about why he was killed.
That's great, Dhakota. Yeah, amazing. That's amazing.
Dhakota Williams is famous
Dhakota, fantastic. Beautiful.
for all the wrong reasons.
Well done, Dhakota.
Her dad was Carl Williams, the drug kingpin and murderer who largely instigated Melbourne's gangland war.
How you going, Roberta?
Her mum is Roberta Williams, a former street kid who married Carl and enjoyed the wealth of the family business, drug making.
Don't take your tongue out at me. Don't be cheeky.
Her pop, George, was part of it too, also spending his fair share of time in jail.
Is there pimples on your tongue?
Oh, and her babysitter was a hitman.
Your childhood would have to be one of the most unusual in Australia, wouldn't it?
Something like that, probably one of them, yeah.
Is there another setup? That's why I'm probably here, set up from your family.
All the killings, the cops, it was a train wreck.
Madness, yeah. Hurricane on steroids.
If she turns out normal, it's one of the great survival stories of all time.
Yeah.
Are there times when you have looked back and thought, gee, I wish we were just a normal suburban family with none of this notoriety?
I guess so, but then we'd also be pretty boring. Like, I don't know, I'm just used to it. I'm happy with who my family are. I'm not saying it's good, none of it's good, but it just makes me different. It makes me who I am.
It can't be easy being the daughter of a killer immortalised a decade ago on the hit TV show Underbelly.
If this is America, she'd be Al Capone's daughter. It was like show business, you know. It was like Hollywood, it was like gangster time. They were like rock stars in an awful way. I mean, they're dropping like flies. It's a very weird way to raise a child.
At 17, Dhakota's now on the verge of adulthood, and ironically has her sights set on being a lawyer. She's also seeking answers from her childhood. In particular, her dad's murder inside a maximum security prison.
I just think there was a lot of corruption in places that there shouldn't have been.
Ultimately, Dhakota Williams is speaking out tonight in a desperate bid to shake off the sins of her father.
But you are forever Carl Williams' daughter.
Yeah, which I can make a good thing out of it. I can become a good person so people don't think badly of me.
It's very hard to shake off that enormous amount of history.
Yeah.
When Carl Williams married Roberta Stevens in February 2001, he was already a successful drug manufacturer, along with his dad, George. He'd also made his first killing.
Piece of piss, mate!
Carl, you may kiss your bride.
On the flip side, Carl was about to become a father for the first time.
When I was pregnant with Dhakota, we used to lay in the nursery every night. I'd sit in the feeding chair and he'd lay on the floor with his hands behind his head, and we'd talk about our child because we didn't find out the sex of Dhakota. We actually thought she was a boy. And he'd come to every hospital visit. Carl was a really good person and had a beautiful heart, and that's what we seen at home.
He might have had a good heart, but his blood could run cold in a split second.
I wouldn't class him as a violent man. He never showed any violence towards us, but...
Roberta, he tried to kill you.
We had our issues, Liam, but...
Well, he shot at you 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, he did, but...
You were pregnant at the time with Dhakota.
Yes.
He could have killed you.
I don't think he was aiming to kill me, but he was trying to scare me, yes.
Does Dhakota know that story?
That I don't know.
You haven't talked to her about that?
I'm not going to sit there and talk to her about stuff like that. She's a little girl. She needs to be a little girl. Remember when we used to come here when you were little?
This is the key to how Roberta has brought her daughter up.
And those ducks have probably still been around from then.
It's her motherly instinct to fiercely protect Dhakota by teaching her to completely ignore her dad's violent past.
Have you ever had a chat to your mum about what your dad did?
No.
Never?
No, still not till today. I still haven't really spoke about it.
Until this interview, Dhakota has always refused to look back at the murder and mayhem.
For you, being his daughter, has it been hard to live with?
Not really, no. I just couldn't imagine my life any different now.
I've taught her that there's no point in looking back. We don't walk backwards, we walk forward, and we have to move forward.
Tonight, we're seeing Roberta Williams in a different light. She's speaking not as Carl's wife, but as Dhakota's mum.
Anything at all?
And for her, the past only brings up shame and guilt, especially the memory of leaving Dhakota when she was still a baby to go to jail on drug charges.
Well, you know, it's not worth it. Crime does not pay. Believe me.
Well, you would know.
Yeah. It's attractive at the time and you're not thinking about what the consequences are, what you're doing to others.
For Dhakota's dad, that criminal attraction meant he was rarely out of jail during her childhood.
What would be your strongest memory?
I guess just sitting in the visiting rooms and seeing him. That's probably the strongest memory.
Being inside the jail?
Yeah.
Melbourne's underworld violence started in the 1990s, but it escalated a few years later into a bloody drug turf battle between Dhakota's family and the Moran crime family. Her dad used to make drugs for the Morans. Then Carl decided to go it alone and undercut them. In October 1999, 18 months before Dhakota was even born, the Moran brothers shot Carl in the stomach for his disloyalty. And so began Carl's vendetta.
He sort of grew out of nowhere. I mean, he was a small-time drug runner who suddenly became this self-styled leader.
At the time, Federal Senator Darren Hinch was one of Australia's top talkback radio hosts. The Gangland War was the #1 news story, with Carl Williams its star performer.
I think he used to call himself Mr. Premier at some stage. He got bigger and bigger, and greedier, as they tend to do.
And the greed made Carl a target. When Dhakota was still a baby, local thug and hitman Andrew Benji Veneman was hired by the Morans to kill Carl and Roberta.
Dhakota was probably a few months old and him and an associate were hiding in the roof of our house.
He was in the roof?
Yeah, and Dhakota was newborn and she woke up for her feed and fed her and I was comforting her and rocking her to sleep, and Andrew had told me later that he heard me comforting my daughter and he just couldn't bring himself to do that.
Dhakota saved your life?
So Dhakota saved me, yeah.
When you heard that, did that amaze you?
Yeah. I don't think I believed it at the start.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's beyond weird what happened next. After being hired to kill Carl, the underworld hitman, a suspect in at least 5 murders, became Carl's right-hand man and trusted friend. It's an insight into how quickly loyalties shift in this dark criminal underbelly.
So, Andrew Benji Veneman, What was he to you?
Like a family friend. We'd call him Uncle Andrew.
You called him Uncle?
Yeah.
Andrew just adored the kids, loved the kids. Every Tuesday night he'd take them to religious education in Sunshine and bring them home and give them their dinner and stuff. He'd do their reading with them.
He babysat Dhakota?
Yeah. Had Dhakota all the time.
So the cold, calculating and violent hitman was also a caring babysitter.
Don't look at it.
It's an extraordinary juxtaposition, and Roberta says Carl was similar.
He was amazing, doted on his daughter, just adored her. She was his world, his everything. I don't think he'd ever loved until he had Dhakota.
I like the way you're feeding the ducks and your dad at the same time.
Watching Carl playfully spend time with Dhakota, it's hard to believe that this baby-faced dad ordered the gangland deaths of at least 4 men.
He treated my 3 elder children no different than he treated Dhakota. You know, Carl was very fussy with the kids and wanted to make sure they had the best of everything.
This is the dad Dhakota knows and likes to remember. The Carl Williams the rest of us know is simply a stranger to her.
I try to just put that all aside. Just think of him as my dad. Like, he was a good person to me. I don't really think about the rest of it.
Coming up, as a brutal underbelly story unfolds,
as I said, it was a very messy scene.
Carl's dark side is deadly and public.
Your dad helped to murder their dads.
I don't want to sound rude or anything, but...
Did Daddy's little girl know the real Carl Williams?
How do you balance between your head and your heart, between the murderer and the loving dad?
That's next on 60 Minutes.
Hello, I'm Tara Brown. Thanks for watching. To keep up with the latest from 60 Minutes Australia, make sure you subscribe to our channel. You can also download the 9Now app for full episodes and other exclusive 60 Minutes content.